Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narativ. We have breaking news tonight. Narativ has obtained leaked documents from Russia's intelligence services that directly implicate Elon Musk and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene in amplifying content created by Russia's intelligence operatives. We can also exclusively report to you tonight that that content was designed under the direction of Vladimir Putin's inner circle, and it was designed to influence US policy on Ukraine. And in Greene's case, the documents reveal they were designed to push wholesale manufactured narratives. This explosive revelation comes days after former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called for civil or criminal action against individuals distributing Russian disinformation. That's just ahead on Narativ. As you join me tonight, we have a first Western media look at an extraordinary trove of leaked documents from Russia's intelligence services. The leaked documents from Russia's social design agency reveal in shocking detail how Russia's spies continuously monitor, analyze, and create content designed to feed lies into the American media ecosystem, mostly in favor of Donald Trump and the GOP, and against the Democratic Party, U.S. national interest, and Ukrainian interests. There is a lot in these documents, but perhaps the most shocking are details of how Elon Musk, the owner of X, formerly Twitter, which he acquired, by the way, with funding obtained from two Russian oligarchs, and who claims he's in regular conversation with Vladimir Putin, well, that Elon Musk was actively involved in distributing Russian intelligence agency content designed to weaken America's support of Ukraine. And now, for the very first time in Western media, we're able to show you the actual evidence that investigators have collected that links Elon Musk to distributing content created by Russia's intelligence services. Now, the Russian intelligence services created this agency called this Social Design Agency. And in this Social Design Agency, they created a lot of content that was anti-American and certainly anti-American support of Ukraine. So what you're seeing here are the actual minutes of the meeting in which they discussed the success of having Elon Musk distribute some of the content they created at the Social Design Agency, a Russian intelligence front. It shows a picture of Volodymyr Zelensky looking like he's jonesing for something. And then the tweet attached to it says, when it's been 5 minutes and you haven't asked for $1 billion in aid. So clearly indicating there's some sort of drug analogy or someone jonesing for something in terms of the aid that they were getting from the United States. Now, the content, that meme, created by the Russian intelligence services, directly under the direction, we're told, of people inside Vladimir Putin's inner circle. They created the Social Design Agency that created this meme. And Elon Musk obliged. He put out this particular meme, and it was seen by 95 million people across X. This is unbelievable and stunning evidence for the first time ever that we can prove that Elon Musk is using X as a weapon, as a means to distribute Russian intelligence content across the world and across his very large influence base, and of course to every user of X. He is pushing Russian intelligence propaganda designed to weaken America and strengthen Russia's interests. And there you have it. You'll only see it on Narativ, the actual minutes of the meeting in which they report how Elon Musk distributed content created by Russia's intelligence services to his user base and how it was seen by 95 million people. The actual meme, designed to weaken America's interests in Ukraine, and it shows Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, jonesing for $1 billion in aid. Very helpful, of course, to Vladimir Putin and Russia's interests in Ukraine. Now, perhaps even more alarming is that the leaks show that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene amplified a completely fabricated story about Ukrainian child trafficking. The document details how this completely fake news was spread through multiple channels before reaching Greene. Sophia, who is one of the key managers of the social design agency, notes in the meeting minutes the new team made a fake theft of children Americans seriously published success, making absolute fun of American media for publishing this incredibly fake story about Ukrainian children being trafficked. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene only too happy to add her many, many followers to the story by perpetrating a completely fake narrative created wholesale by the Russian intelligence agency to hurt Americans' interest in the United States, but also hurt America's interests in Ukraine, and certainly improve Russia's interests in the world. Now, these revelations about Elon Musk and Marjorie Taylor Greene come just days after former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told Rachel Maddow she believes much more severe action needs to be taken against people pushing Russian propaganda.
I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence, because the Russians are unlikely, except in a very few cases, to ever stand trial in the United States.
Also tonight, we've got an extraordinary piece of new evidence, a video presentation from the Social Design Agency. Now, this is the design agency which was created by Russian intelligence services to create the very content we've been talking about tonight, the content that Elon Musk and Marjorie Taylor Greene have been distributing to their users. Now, this is an actual video created by the Social Design Agency. This is a front for Russian intelligence services. They're not hiding the fact that they are, in fact, a front for Russian intelligence services. They say in this video that because they've been exposed by French intelligence, which in fact they did in December of 2023, they felt that they could come out of the closet, so to speak, and reveal their tactics to the world. And that man there you saw in the hoodie is the head of it all. Ilya Gambashidze is his name. He runs the Social Design Agency on behalf of Russia's intelligence services. And they do three very important things for the Russians.
Нашу работу можно разделить на три направления. Мониторинг, аналитика.
Then goes on to describe the three-pronged approach of the agency. They do a deep monitoring, then they do the analytics, and then they create content for the different social media organizations and groups that they might be targeting. So they take a deep amount of time to understand the American consumer. Once they have that monitoring in place, they analyze all the data they get, and then they create content designed to disrupt the traditional news flow, designed to disrupt the information with lies, with other disinformation in Russia's interest. And this is basically their spoken undertaking here. This is what they do. This is their core business. They are designed to create lies and disinformation on behalf of Russia, to move Russian interests into the advantageous position around the world, and to certainly remove any opposition related to their efforts in the United States, Brazil, or anywhere else around the world. They've been very effective in taking these former democracies and turning them into divided ecosystems where you've got two sides competing against each other, and then helping people like Donald Trump become the president of the United States in their interests. Well, this is how they do it. And this is the machine that they use around the world to elect people like Donald Trump, or to elect people like Bolsonaro in Brazil, or Erdogan in Turkey. This is how Russia does it. They're able to attack a population at its social media platforms. It's able to sow a lot of disinformation throughout those social media platforms. And because of that, they're able to create a divided community, a divided population, where you've got people believing stuff about cats being eaten in Springfield or what have you. These are nonsense stories. But because you've got disinformation agencies like this, like the Social Design Agency, able to do their work in a free society because they take advantage of the fact that we're in a free society, well, guess what? That's how they get in. Once they're in, they're able to cause a whole lot of damage because they've also paid a lot of people to do that work for them. People like Elon Musk, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and indeed people like the Tenet Six, the six influencers we've been describing to you since last week, people like Tim Pool and Benny Johnson and others who are on the Kremlin payroll to push this nonsense propaganda. And now we know that Elon Musk himself has been pushing this very, very same propaganda. It's quite a state of affairs we find ourselves in tonight, of the same interests that are gunning for you and your vote this November. Why are you only hearing about the story tonight on Narativ and not on national media outlets like MSNBC or CNN or elsewhere? Well, the truth is they are too scared to run this content because it too directly reflects on who their ownership is and who their marching orders are taken from. They are too very controlled by Russian influence and Russian money that is controlling the American media experience and the American media narrative that has put us all into a state of chaos as we head into the next election. Joining me now is Olga Lautman, a friend of the show. She's the host of the Kremlin Files and also a senior fellow at SIPA. And hello to you, Olga. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
I'm really good. And I'm glad you're here because you're such an experienced person to talk about all these new allegations that have come out today.
Everything we're seeing, the social media agency, social design agency, Prigozhin's troll factories, the doppelganger operations. Basically, this is the same playbook. The only thing that has happened is the advancement of technology. And because technology now, they're able to reach billions of people in a matter of minutes, they have developed operations specifically, not only using social media to push their narratives, but also using people within our countries, whether it's United States or European countries or whatever it is around the globe, to push their narratives for them. And finally, we have seen both Europe and the US fighting back because over the past decade, you see the far right is rising, the power of the far right. Russia has been propping up the far right and frankly, all fringe groups, the fringe left, the far, they've been propping them up because their point and their goal is to basically implode our own countries and overthrow democracy. And over the past decade, they've had more than enough of their share of enablers who are assisting and inside the countries, and whether they're doing it through social media or think tanks or academia or other hateful facets, they are pushing Russia's propaganda. And finally, after all the damage that has been done, because America now is unrecognizable. If you compare it to 10 years ago, we are so divided, so polarized, to the point that you have a portion of this country who actually thinks Russia is the country we should be aligned with. Putin is a great guy. Who needs democracy? Why do we even need democracy? We could just install Trump and have an authoritarian rule us. And you have all these absolutely insane concepts that are very anti-democratic and at the same time conspiracy theories coming through. And now the U.S. is finally showing that a lot of this comes from foreign intelligence services who are looking to basically implode us.
It is interesting to me that one of the key things you're pointing out here is that this is a weapon. We have been at war essentially with Russia. And this is their way of fighting wars. They know they're going to lose a war with us if it actually came down to NATO's strength versus Russia's strength. They know they're losing that war, but they know they can win a war on an information front. But it is war. It may not look like war to us. It may look like bits of news and little people on Twitter and people on YouTube and whatever, but it is war. And these people are acting on behalf of Russia's state interests in order to destroy America. It's as simple as that. And you can take it as something else. You can lighten it up and say, hey, it's just a freedom of speech and people are entitled to their opinion and all that. But really, freedom of speech is never extended to foreign countries invading you. It's extended to the people who happen to live in the United States of America. Those are the people who enjoy freedom of speech. you don't get to enjoy freedom of speech if you're an attacking force from Russia. And so I want to play you a little bit of this video. I showed it to you before we get on. This was part of the leak that came out today, showing exactly what the social design agency and the Structura National Technology Company, these are both Russian fronts of Russian intelligence. And in these, they actually basically admit what they do quite proudly, but they also show that they're aligned directly with the intelligence agencies. I'll just play 30 seconds and then you can jump in and give us your comments on it.
Это включает в себя сбор и анализ информации из западного медиаполя, произнесла слово «doppelganger». После того, как французская разведка произнесла слово
It's interesting they're showing those labels there.
скрываться смысла больше нет. И сейчас мы расскажем, что было сделано за год нашей работы. Мы работаем системно. Наша работа включает в себя сбор и анализ информации из западного медиаполя, поиск потенциально опасных направлений информационных атак, аналитика, разработка собственных нарративов, а также их упаковку в контент, работающий на увеличение коэффициента полезной эффективности проекта. Нашу работу можно разделить на 3 направления: мониторинг, аналитика и креатив. Для начала расскажем, как работает служба мониторинга. На этом этапе задействовано 24 человека.
Okay, so let's lower the volume. I'll keep it running, but there, two things strike me there. He's showing his military labels, it looks like. He's not even hiding the fact that he's operating on behalf of the Russian military. And secondly, is that 3-layered approach that they take, which looks like your typical ad agency where they monitor, analyze, and create content. But what they're really doing is monitoring, analyzing, and creating content. They see Greg Greenwald, you see all these people, Glenn Greenwald, sorry, all these people that we are so familiar with as being disinformation agents in our world. And then all these doppelganger websites, these are not actually the Jerusalem Post. They're not actually Newsweek or what have you. These are made to look like Newsweek and made to look like the Jerusalem Post in order to confuse Americans. But let's talk a little bit about this monitoring, analyzing, and creation thing that they've got going on there.
This is the typical KGB playbook. You monitor to look for divisions, for any kind of divisive narratives, for any kind of events that are happening or percolating inside of the U.S. And then after that, you analyze to see basically how you can exacerbate this. And then you create a plan to carry out your operations. And now they've been doing this again with social media and with all the influencers who are frankly on their payroll, as we've seen. They are carrying out the work of Russia's intelligence. Now, this is not connected to Russia's intelligence. This is Russia's intelligence. And it's the same thing I've been screaming about RT, which was mentioned in the indictment by the Department of Justice and Sputnik. These are arms of Russian intelligence because Russia is a security state. And unfortunately, Westerners look at these as independent. Oh, we have our media outlets are not connected to the government. If it does receive government funding, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily carrying out everything that the government is telling them to. And they just receive support of the Russian government. Whereas inside of Russia, every single thing, whether it be think tanks, whether it be youth exchange programs, whether it be the Russian Orthodox Church operating overseas, every single thing is working with Russian intelligence embedded in it in order to carry out these operations abroad. And this just shows you another perfect thing where they're using this agency before with Prigozhin's troll factories to carry operations against us in order to implode our country and to basically cause distrust in our media, distrust in our institutions, and overthrow democracy in the United States and around the globe.
So it's so important that people realize that what you're looking at here is these are not some independent media companies. These are actual agencies. This is actual arm of the intelligence community. This is one and the same thing. And the same thing with RT, which came out in this very brazen indictment we heard about last week. And it involved mentioning these particular individuals, Linia and Kostya, I believe were their names, These are people who worked for actual Russia Today, worked for the news organization known as RT. But RT, as we found out in the subsequent reports that have come out, is part of the GRU. There's no distinction between what's coming out of intelligence services and what comes out of RT, because they've embedded themselves within RT. And that they funded this group of, let's call them the Tenet Six, but they're 6 well-known influencers, people like Tim Pool, people like Benny Johnson, like Ruben. These are well-known influencers who then got paid, I think, $100,000 a week or something like that. Stunning amount of money.
Per episode.
That's just shocking.
40 minutes. 40 minutes.
And they claim they didn't realize, which is, anyone who spends a little bit of time trying to make money on YouTube, like I do, knows that it's impossible to make that kind of money for anything unless some foreign agency is paying you money. That's when you can start making $100,000 a week. But otherwise, you're making maybe 100 cents a week, if you're lucky, of your YouTube content. It's insane that they believe, or they want us to believe, that they weren't knowingly aware that they were operating as spies for the Russians, because obviously that's the only way to do that. But what strikes me about this organization is you've got this doppelganger thing, which is we just described, which is this social design agency on the one hand. Then you've got this Tenet 6, which came out of RT. And then you've got someone we've completely ignored in this entire organizational structure of what's been happening. And maybe this is by design, but Elon Musk, who continuously amplifies every one of these Tenet 6 over and over again. The number of times, if you monitor his feed, that he's retweeting or reposting Benny Johnson or Tim Pool, it's astonishing. He's like one of their biggest fans. He's got the biggest footprint, of course, on X. He can promote anybody he wants to, any big name. He can promote any fake news he wants. So when he puts out someone's name or interacts with them, suddenly they're big news. And Elon Musk is, again, we've just accepted him as being this billionaire genius who can solve all our problems. But more and more, you look at him and he just looks like he's just a Russian agent. One of the things that came out in just recent weeks has been this: we now know that he has been funded partially by the Saudis, which we all knew before. But now it's become apparent that he's also been funded by the sons of 2 very prominent Russian oligarchs. So there's no longer even they're not even hiding it anymore. Let me put it that way. Elon Musk and X is basically a subsidiary of a Russian oligarch venture capital firm, which is a front for Russian intelligence and a front for Putin. Let me just hear your comments on Elon Musk and then see how this whole web is so remarkable and so large.
Let me go back to RT and then we'll move forward to Elon Musk. RT and Sputnik, like I said, they are an arm of Russian intelligence. I have been saying this forever, and I am so happy that finally the United States declared them an arm of Russian intelligence. They have 3 purposes. One is to spread disinformation and basically to attack us from within inside. And cause maximum chaos and so division and whatnot, polarize us. 2, it is to recruit people. And the first thing over the past decade, anytime I see someone pushing Russian disinformation or narratives, I check to see if they have any ties to 2 things. One is RT, one is the Valday Club. Sure enough.
Which is the second one there with the what club?
A Valday Club. Valday Club is basically a think tank center, and it brings all the prominent people from the West, from other think tank centers, to have them write and participate in events. And all these think tanks inside of Russia, they're not independent. These are all other tools of Russia's intelligence services to target policy, people who are within reach of policymaking and whatnot.
You told me something new today, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, no, Russia had the whole operation through NGOs where they target other NGOs. For God's sakes, there was one from Moscow Carnegie. He's a GRU colonel who was whitewashed and accepted in U.S. And people in D.C. at every single major think tank were writing pieces with him, going to events in Moscow. The guy is a GRU colonel. There's no such thing as the former colonel. And now you can see his narratives very clearly because now he doesn't have to keep this facade of actually being diplomatic or Western thinking. Now he has gone right back into his intelligence ways. But RT, so the first purpose is to spread disinformation. The second purpose is to recruit people within America or people in Europe or people in South and Central America or wherever they operate. And the third purpose is to move their spies around. From the KGB days, Tabs was at the time very popular to move KGB operatives around under the guise journalist cover. You've seen other smaller outlets use these days where you have GRU operatives or SVR operatives in war zones and other conflicts and areas around the world under the guise of a cameraman or a journalist, correspondent, whatever it is. And that's why I was so outraged when Trump invited Lavrov and Kislyak to the White House in 2017, because the only media agency allowed was TASS. And I'm like, we literally have spies in our Oval Office. Besides Lavrov and Kislyak, it was outrageous. So they have three purposes: to move agents, recruit people, and spread disinformation. And this is extremely dangerous because they were able to operate effectively for over a decade in Europe, in the United States. And you see the end result of what is happening in America, in Europe, all the turmoil, the division, the hate, the disinformation, the conspiracy theories, and whatnot. So this is extremely, in itself, a dangerous tool of Russia. Now, going to Elon Musk, the man is, I frankly don't even understand how he has access to classified information and contracts in the U.S. government.
This is very important to notice. He has got top secret information because he's got top secret clearance because of his military work that he does. In addition to all the other data that he has from Starlink and all these other places, he's probably one of the most well-informed people in the world when it comes to America's positioning in almost every sphere of influence that we have. And he feeds all of that directly to Putin in their regular phone calls.
He took over Twitter and he doesn't need the money.
No.
But I firmly believe he took over Twitter to turn it as a tool against the United States, to
100%.
weaponize it. Because what we have seen since, one, he basically, the algorithms removed, for instance, all protests that were happening in Iran. Iranian protesters that were protesting against the Iranian regime were silenced. He killed all of our algorithms who were dealing with Ukraine. Every single Ukrainian saw their numbers drop substantially.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because he didn't want the Ukrainian content and truth coming out of Russia's atrocities inside of Ukraine. And then on top of it, we're going back to now this Tenet Media and Tim Pool and Johnson and the rest. There is not one day that I don't go on to Twitter, and I go on multiple times to scroll through, that RT, even now, even that is sanctioned, the Russian politicians, Russian embassies, and these far-right mega influencers are not in my feed. They are
all the time. All the time.
Feed. I don't follow them, and this is what is being shoved at us.
You talk about someone who's operating on a structural level as a Russian agent because he is providing everything that Russia wants from their intelligence agency's perspective. He's doing exactly what they want, providing disinformation. He's able to recruit under his false information that he puts out there, and he's able to contain any opposition, which is so important because certainly my numbers have gone down. I have very difficult time getting through to an audience on Twitter or on X. Your numbers have happened the same. Anytime there's someone, at one point, you didn't allow me to go live for a matter of months. It took a lot of pressure just to allow me to go live again. So this man is clearly operating under the interests of the extreme parts of the far right here, which happened to coincide with the Russian intelligence services. And the fact that he's been amplifying these 6 assets of the Russians is an indicator that he's aware of what he's doing, that he's working for them. How else would he know to amplify these particular 6? It's not because he suddenly likes them. It's because he knows that they're agents of the Russian state and he's amplifying them.
No, and not only that, he's attacking our election. He's using Twitter as a means to attack our elections, to sow distrust in our institutions, in our electoral processes, distrust in voting, and the fairness of elections. America has fair and free elections. We've never had issues with elections until Trump came along and decided to spew garbage that everything is rigged. Nothing is rigged. Everyone's vote is counted. No dead people are counted. No illegal people are counted. Every American citizen's vote is counted. And he not only promotes people who are attacking democracy and Western institutions are extremely important for a functioning democracy, like media, like government agencies, but he's also himself doing it. So I don't know, like I said, I still scratch my head and don't understand how he's able to do this outright. And frankly, how all of them use. So these are the 6. I can tell you, I've been compiling a list since the past decade of people who spew Russian propaganda nonstop. And then you see by the DOJ indictment that it's apparently 600 or 700 that the FBI is keeping an eye in the U.S. of these Kremlin shells, and around 2,800 that the FBI is keeping an eye on around the globe.
And I don't want to gloss over this point earlier on that I made here. The reason that Elon Musk was able to buy X, to buy Twitter and turn it into X, we knew that there was a lot of money coming from the Saudis. We knew that already. But the remainder of the money, it seems that one of the top investors was the sons of Peter Avon and Vadim Mashkovich, who works for 8VC, which is a venture capital firm. It's an offshoot of Peter Thiel, run by Joe Lonsdale. These are the typical, if you ever wanted to have a hit list of who you might think would be involved in the purchase of X for the Russians, Peter Thiel would be amongst them. And of course, so we know now these guys might be distancing themselves from their father or whatever, but these are basic oligarch sons. They're spoiled brats, gotten tons and tons of money from their father's illicit and illegally gotten gains through stealing money from the Russian people, all under Vladimir Putin's watch. And this is who owns Elon Musk's X today. This is who funded Elon Musk's X today. And this is why he's operating, maybe not even why, maybe that's why they bought in the first place, as basically a Russian agent. He's a Russian asset.
There is no such thing as sons of oligarchs. And this is not like in America where you come from a wealthy family and can make independent decisions and move abroad and carry on with your life. In Russia, first of all, the fathers are funding Russia's genocide in Ukraine. That's for starters. Second of all, the fathers are heavily embedded not only with the Kremlin, but with the security services. There's no other way you make money inside of Russia unless you're working both with Russian intelligence and doing what you need to do for them domestically and abroad, and working with the Kremlin. The minute you stop, you will see a fabricated case come through the court systems in Russia. Suddenly you get arrested and your assets get seized and you get thrown in jail for a 1980s crime. Third of all, if you are living overseas and have family back home, unless you carry out operations for the family, for the Russia's intelligence services, your family at home is at risk. So there is no way that they're living in the United States, and that goes for many. No way that they're living in the United States with access to powerful people. And if they're told to carry something out, they have to do it. If not, then their parents or grandparents and family members are at risk inside Russia. That's why I laughed with Pavel Durov, who also runs Telegram, quote unquote, independent as some Western media has called it. Pavel Durov was living, I believe, in Dubai. His family's back home. How is his social media Telegram independent if his family's living there and walking around free? The thing, Telegram is a tool of the Russian state. And
without a doubt.
With Russia, you can create an independent platform, but the minute it gains any kind of attention or success, security services will come and say, okay, you're either staying with us or you're not staying with us, and we're putting in new management, but this is our platform.
Yeah.
And this has happened to Telegram in 14. And this is the same thing that happened to VKontakte, which Durov also created and owned, which he in 2013 admitted working with Russia's FSB and handing over information on users and communications and everything else. So
some people suspect he's actually just handed himself over to the French now. Or this is more of a...
It absolutely could be, because I actually documented everything that night of his arrest. I have never, and I can tell you, I've seen a lot in Russia.
Mhm.
I have never in my life seen such a response of panic coming out of Russia over his arrest. They were waking people up at 2, 3 a.m. Moscow time to make comment. Normally when something happens, they wait till 7, 8 a.m. and then send out the people to start making comments. Here for days, they were carrying on. And their biggest fear is that he will hand over the Telegram code, which will not only show that Telegram is an arm of Russia's intelligence services, but also that Russia has been using Telegram to recruit local thugs to carry out sabotage operations and blow up shit across Europe over the past, what we've seen.
Not only Europe, also there's more I could play you here, because I do have a clip that I found of Pavel Durov talking about how he was advising Jack, formerly of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, and Elon Musk about how Elon Musk can turn X into X, basically to help. He gave him advice on how he could turn Twitter into a much more lean organization, which means that Pavel Durov, obviously acting on behalf of the Russian state, because that's who he acts on behalf of, was advising both Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk about the sale of Twitter to Elon Musk so you could turn it into X. These are very close entities. These are not things that are just, they pretend like they don't know each other. They pretend like they're disparate parts of the world, but these are all the same part of what I've called them the oligarch web, where you've got other names for them. But basically, this is a structure of social media, currency, terror organizations, drug running organizations, all sorts of hacking operations that all basically run under
Sex trafficking.
Yeah, all of that, human trafficking, all under the auspices of the Russians, basically, and Russian oligarchs who basically run this enterprise for Putin and company. And what you land up with, and just to circle back a little bit here to Tim Pool, is crap like this on American screens.
They know it. But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipe.
I can't even listen to it, but this is...
Now, this is Russian. Someone wrote this for him, and this is why I become extremely suspicious, because look, I have ties to the region, and this is why I'm so vested in monitoring Russia and Ukraine. Imagine tomorrow, nonstop, as a Ukrainian, Russian, American, I wake up in 24/7 for the next 7 months. I try post about certain narratives about something in Peru. And this is all I do. Clearly, I would be on someone's payroll. And here, for our Americans to sit day and night, to have this anger, this is worth $100,000, I guess, to have this performance where he even puts a lot of anger. I guarantee you he didn't either know anything of Ukraine or had supported Ukraine in the past. And I actually think he did support Ukraine in 2014-15.
He'll support wherever he feels the attention comes from. I know Tim Pool for a long time. I know exactly the kind of person he is. If there's money, there's attention, he'll take it. And this is why he's spewing this crap. Of course he takes the $100,000. Of course he takes that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No American would get that emotional, slamming the table and screaming Kremlin propaganda that Ukraine is the enemy. And same thing with David Sachs. David Sachs, morning to night, the guy before 2022 never even posted anything with the word Ukraine. And suddenly we moved on.
Which is why these guys should be arrested. These guys should be arrested. This is the thing which I find so astonishing is they've been let off the hook is because they claim to be unwitting targets. These are not unwitting targets. Of course, you knew you were taking money from the Russians. And the same thing with Elon Musk. He should be arrested. It's time for us to really understand exactly what the criminal laws are. We are not allowed to do what Elon Musk is doing. We are not allowed to do what Tim Pool and Benny Johnson are doing. We're not allowed to take money from the Russians in order to talk about whatever crap they want us to talk about every day. That's illegal. That's spy work. That is not stuff that's legal. You are entitled to have freedom of speech in this country if it's your opinion about something, but not to get paid by the KGB, essentially, to run this crap, and yet they're not getting arrested. Why do you think there's such a reluctance?
That's exactly what I've said. Look, if someone comes to me and tells me I don't support Ukraine, I don't care about Ukraine, this is America. This is the whole point. We have freedom of speech. Everyone can believe and say what they want. If they are spewing narratives that were written for them by the FSB to read to me, that's a different story. Now you're working on behalf of a foreign intelligence services. And for some reason, for far too long, we have ignored it. And is there any difference between what Elon is doing now or what the NRA was doing when Russia was shoveling their leadership to Russia? And then they were used as a money funneling operation for the 2016 election, or what the evangelical leaders were doing when they were praising Russia as it was invading Ukraine and committing atrocities in Syria. These are all elements, but now with social media influencers, but it's been the same thing with think tank members, evangelicals, NRA, and frankly, everything. Joe Stein whitewashed Assad's genocide. How are you, as an American, trying to defend and claim that he did not use chemical weapons against his own people when you saw all the videos of chemical weapons being used and all the intelligence, not from U.S., from many intelligence agencies, pointed to the fact that he was responsible for it. How 100%. Are you, as an American, going to sit at a dinner in RT in 2015 with Putin, and then suddenly you become the thing in the 2016 election that strips just enough votes away from Hillary? Yeah. And Russia, at the time, in October before the election, was doing everything to amplify Joe Stein in order to earn more votes.
I'm glad you mentioned Hillary Clinton, because I want to play you a little clip to the point of whether these people should be arrested or not. This is what Hillary Clinton said a couple of nights ago on Rachel Maddow.
I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence, because the Russians are unlikely, except in a very few cases, to ever stand trial in the United States.
She's right.
Yeah, she's 100% right. And this is another thing I've been scratching my head for a long time. If you go back to espionage wars and back to the Soviet Union, Cold War, KGB versus CIA. And the KGB was recruiting Americans, but at that time, they were doing it in a point where they were trying to keep cover. The Americans were acted carefully, like had a drop location, and that's where they would drop the information and whatnot. And when they were caught, they were charged for collaborating with the enemy and with the KGB. Now, they feel like these people don't even try to hide it. There are no secret Dropbox locations. All you have to do is go on Twitter and publicly collaborate with Russia's intelligence services, or in some cases, even Iranian intelligence services. And you could do it publicly. And as long as you're doing it publicly, then that's it. It's fine. And there are no repercussions. And she's 100% correct. Because again, if you are taking funding from a foreign intelligence agency to either spread disinformation, disseminate their narratives, or carry out operations on U.S. soil, you should
be arrested. Be arrested under the espionage charges, because that's what it is. It's espionage. And As you point out, the Cold War, it was pretty clear. We had a lot of distrust for the Russians back then, and you knew you not to associate with Russians because, hey, you could get into real trouble and they may try to turn you into a spy. Now, everyone is looking for the Russians because they want the money. It's exactly the opposite. Let's be completely clear about what our laws are and whether you're either a patriot of America or you're a traitor of America. And if you're a traitor of America and you're siding with the Russians, you should get charged with espionage laws. It's obvious.
I'll add, the blame also goes on to our politicians, and not only in US, but Europe, because over the past few decades, people have tried to normalize relations with Russia, and there's no clear indicator that Russia is an enemy of the United States. And as long as there is none, then you're not collaborating with an enemy of the United States, because there is no policy stating this like it did during the Cold War. And this is the number one thing that needs to be done. First of all, though, when it comes to cooperating with foreign intelligence agencies, again, whether it's Russia or the British services, you are not allowed to work with friend or foe on behalf of a foreign intelligence service. So that's for starters. But we also need, on a political level, to have a clear doctrine that Russia is not our friend, that they are the enemy, that the United States considers it a hostile actor. And this needs to be clearly defined, that anyone who collaborates with Russia can be swept up. And lastly, I'll say that this is why I've been pushing for years, and I was hoping after the full-scale invasion that Russia gets designated a state sponsor of terrorism. I personally would love to see terrorist state and state sponsor of terrorism, because if it receives that designation, it makes it very hard for Russians to buy our accountants, our lawyers, our lobbyists, our social media, influencers, and do any kind of business. And that would cut out probably 70% of what Russia was directly doing. And then the other 30% will go through cutouts like Hungary or Serbia or other proxies of Russia. But these are very important steps that need to be taken. And this experiment of Russia's experiment, honestly, if you look back at the bigger picture, it looks extremely familiar to what Cambridge Analytica was doing in 2016. It's really identical, where it's using algorithms to put people together, like-minded people, using algorithms to understand people, can scan tweets. I'm sure Russia's intelligence services have gone through everyone's Twitter history to see if there's any kind of vulnerabilities of that person, or they're depressed, if they're a narcissist, whatever it is, to be able to approach them.
And just seeing what we discussed tonight, we started off with the social design agency, this offshoot of Russian intelligence that clearly does this kind of work, that creates, monitors, analyzes, and then creates content directly to confuse and disinform Americans. We've shown you how Tenet 6 or these social influencers have been paid by RT, which is now part of Russian intelligence services. We've shown you how Elon Musk amplifies the Tenet 6, how he's part of the infrastructure that amplifies a lot of this content that's coming out of Russia's intelligence services. And we've shown you as well that he's funded, that the whole purchase of X came from Russia's oligarchs and the sons of Avon and Moshkovich. So you've got an entire ecosystem you can see that we've shown you just tonight from what we know, just from the public purview of what we know. We can show you that Russian intelligence is busy with a web of complicated and complex instruments targeting every single American every single day in terms of what we think, in terms of how we think, and in terms of who we should vote for in the next election. So it's critical that people start thinking about that.
And we need to touch on the last thing, because this is extremely super important, and people need to be very vigilant with these doppelganger sites. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't understand what it is, and I think we really should touch in quickly on this. And basically, Russia started testing this in 2017. I remember scrolling on Twitter and opening up The Guardian it was a story about MI6. And I'm reading it and I'm like, this looks like Kremlin propaganda. What the heck is this? And then I go on to The Guardian's homepage. I do a search. The story's not there. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? How is it that this article exists? I even tweeted about it at that time. I tagged Guardian and said, I think your website, Russia hacked into it. and this link goes to Russian, they call it narratives, but it's not actually on the actual Guardian website. So they were testing it out in 2017, and now they've done it to a point that they will take any one of your favorite news outlets and create kind of a mirror image where you think you're reading something out of New York Times or the Washington Post, although New York Times, they seem to always...
Sometimes you don't have to think very hard about it being Russian propaganda these days.
Yeah. But you think you're reading CNN or Washington Post or something else, where in fact it is the mirror link. And if you go onto that CNN website and look for the article, it does not exist.
Right.
It's just that one link that if you happen to stumble across it. And why I'm extremely want to alert people to this, a few weeks ago, there was like a local San Francisco outlet. And they had created this fake story with a fake AI video of a woman who said she was, they quote, hit in a car accident by Kamala Harris, I believe it was a decade ago, and that she was paralyzed and that she, whatever the crap is. The thing was a complete lie. This outlet ended up not being a local San Francisco outlet. It was registered in August of 2024, and the servers are, or at least the registration is based out of Iceland. So you have an outlet that looks like a San Francisco local outlet reporting news on something that happened a decade ago that literally got probably between all the people pushing it, around 10 million views.
Fake,
people
deep
walk away, think that this actually happened and that Harris did flee the scene of an accident and never happened.
So Gavin Newsom has just posted rules right now that deepfakes are no longer legal in California, but doesn't stop Elon Musk from putting stuff out there that's still got deepfakes. No. And this kind of content you point out is so dangerous because people believe it. It looks so real. And this is part of our ecosystem now. This is a structure that we're now living with, and for raising that. We're way out over time. But Olga, thank you so much for being here today. Hopefully we'll have you again soon as we continue to unravel this incredibly large and complex web the Russians have surrounded us, really, with a web of disinformation and intelligence operations that is drowning America's democracy. And hopefully through people like you, who you've been such a stalwart in this, and ever since I've known you for a very long time now, you've been pounding this drum, and you've been absolutely right all the way through. Thank you for all the work you do. I really appreciate it. And we'll have you back on the show soon so we can continue to expose what Russia's really doing.
Definitely. And thank you for having me on.
And everyone should check out the Kremlin Files, Olga's very good podcast.
One day, you'll tell the story of autocrats, crooks, and kings who came for our freedom. A story of citizens who stood up to tyranny and won. The people prevailed and renewed an old vow to a more perfect union. And that was just the beginning. The story continues. Narativ, where truth lives.